problems that other people have. So my goal is at the end of this boot camp, you'll all have ideas for identifying, tracking, learning on, and then modulating some behavior. So most of the work is going to be done by you guys and not by me, which is good. So the steps that we're going to take is, first, we're going to identify behaviors of interest that are amenable to tracking. So that could be something like a disease, like getting headaches, or it could be like when you feel tired. It could be some kind of chronic, environmentally induced behavior, anything that you see, even just feeling happy or feeling, upset or whatever. All of these things you can gain insight into by tracking your own information and then learning on it. The second thing that we're going to do is I'm going to give you a very, very high level introduction to machine learning concepts. So how many people here have done some type of machine learning class before? Anybody? Good. Perfect. That's good. So that's how I want it to be, because it's a very high level thing. So I'm glad, because my slides before were much too technical. Okay, so then once we talk about machine learning concepts, we're going to try, so you guys are going to pair the idea that you've thought about with machine learning algorithms to try and figure out, okay, here's the problem that I have, or the thing that I want to do. Here's the things that I can track, and then what algorithms exist out there that I can use to do what I want to do. And then fourth, I'm going to help you outline next steps for actually creating something like this if you're interested in doing that, right? It could be for a hackathon, could be for your own project or whatever. And the case study throughout this whole thing is going to be my own experience doing this as a side project on my own data that I used to record. Any questions? Okay. All right, so the first step is to identify behaviors of interest. So I'm going to talk about myself briefly, and then you guys are going to work together in groups. So, how many people know what a migraine is, or know much about migraines? Okay, you guys don't know what migraines are? You don't have them. Okay, yeah. Well, I do. So a migraine, for you who have never had it, it's a headache disorder that is basically characterized by recurrent headaches. So you get these headaches every, with some frequency depending on who you are, and it can last from like 2 hours to more than 2 days. Very damaging. It can make you nauseous. It can make you sick. It can make you vomit. Sensitive to light and sound, it just sucks. And up to 1/3 of people have this kind of thing at first called an aura, which is where their visual disturbances, in sight, your vision gets messed up, and then the headache comes after that. So that's the kind that I had. If I was every now and then, my vision would start to blur, and it would look like I was looking through cracked glass, and then maybe an hour later, I'd have a headache for the rest of the day and couldn't do anything. All right, one more slide on migraines, then we'll get it. So they're believed, the reason that migraines are useful for something like this is because they're partially genetic, they think, but they're also environmental, right? So the migraines that you get can be affected and are affected by what you do every day and how you live your life. So they also run in families, but no one really knows why they occur. There's some ideas. People think that there's lots of different triggers. So if you consume a certain thing, or if you're exposed to a certain phenomenon, you can get a migraine, right? So common triggers include food, like cheese, salty foods, MSG, alcohol, caffeine, stress, sensory stimuli, sleep pattern changes, physical factors like exertion or working out or whatever, changes in your environment, medication. Basically anything that happens can give you a migraine, right? So what I did is every day it was actually on my phone, not on a piece of paper, but I noted every day whether or not I had a migraine, how much water I drank in the morning, how much water I drank in the afternoon, how much caffeine I had in the morning, how much caffeine I had in the afternoon, how much I slept, what medications I took, whether I ate any food that had MSG, and then what other foods that I had. So like if I chewed gum, I would record that. And I did this for several months. It actually doesn't take that long. Okay, so that's the phrasing of the problem. So since this is a boot camp, there's a lot of exercises for you guys to do with each other. So what I want you to do now is work individually for 5 minutes and come up with a list of behaviors that you think are at least partly due to environmental factors, and then identify for each one of these behaviors what you would like to learn about the behavior given the environmental information, and then what information you would need to track to identify this. So for myself, it was migraine headaches. I want to learn what causes them, and I was going to track all of these things, right? So I'd like you all to do that individually for about 5 minutes, and then after that, I'd like you to work in groups, and I'll walk around and talk if it's useful. For about 5 minutes, groups of 5 to 7 people. So share your ideas and see if anyone has like a genius idea or if anything's interesting. And then hopefully I would like one person from each group to present the best idea from the group. So we'll go through and every person can talk about what their best idea is. Okay. Does everyone feel okay? Do they have something to talk about? Yes? Good? Okay. All right. So now let's have one person from each group talk about the idea that they think is very interesting. So who wants to go first? All right. Yes. Oh, let me get you a 1 second. Ah, good.
Okay, for my problem is it's not a disease, but it's a symptom that happened to me. I like to read the news and many articles on the tablet, but the problem is when I read many things on the tablet and I switch to look to the different thing, I see the flash, just like flash that pop up, and it's less than a second. It just disappear. It happen and disappear. It happen almost every time that I take a long time to read on a tablet. And I wonder that if this symptom happen to other people. So what I want to track is, I want to track that how long that I read on the tablet. And I want to track how far between my eyes and the tablet, and I want to track about the scale of light on the tablet that is dark or super bright. Yes, and there are 3 things that I want to track to focus about my symptom. Thank you.
It's about the disease that about hypersensitivity, allergy. Yes. The factor that we brainstorm that is about what? About weather, behavior, sleeping duration, dust, food that you take and drink. Yes. Again, please. Yeah, for allergies.
So in our group, we love mosquitoes, and our outcome, our objective is to predicting numbers of dengue incidents in the area. And the variable that we want to take into our model and our equations is the cumulative rainfall in the area, the number of standing waters around the area, the presence of participatory of community in preventing dengue, and the daily average temperature, the housing environment, if how many house in that area that has window nets or something like that, or if the area is near the forest or near the public canal, something like that. We'll use this to predict the number of dengue incidents.
Well, our group, we decided to choose how cause the office syndrome. What is the office syndrome? Office syndrome is something that happens when you stare at the computer or your posture, something too long, and then you got pain fatigue, stress, or musculoskeletal problem, and etc. And that's why we choose this, because nowadays, like several people are risk to have this one, because of our work, our society, we have to use a lot of technology and like social media, and we list like a bit of how to cause it. We have like the posture, timing, ages, management, and characteristics of work. And then we choose the management because like we cannot change the ages, right? We cannot change this, and we cannot change the characteristics of work because someone have to work in that job. So we think to like focus on this behavior, how it causes the office syndrome. Like if you posture like this for 5 minutes, is it better to be like posture like this? Or if you like relax for 5 minutes, is it better than you just stare at the computer for 10 hours? This is our group decided. Thank you.
And hi, what are we talking today? It's about the tics. I think most of you know tics, but actually don't know the name of it. Well, do you have one friend that always twist their eyes? Like you think it's a bad habit, but something. I just learned today that it's a syndrome. Well, one of our friends in the group have tics, and when the tics is when the muscle twists a little bit, and it makes his body jerk a little bit. That's it. And every kid has it as your kids, but it's usually go away when you reach the certain age, like 9. But apparently it's not going away. So he continue having that tics right now. So we tracked down like what caused it, and according to what he said when he's stressed, he get tics, and when he unfocused, he get tics, and when he not getting enough of sleep, he get tics as well. And what help is when he work out, it does help a little bit. And when he take control, he went to a doctor, and they give him a pill to take control of his nerve system, but it doesn't help. It makes his entire body shaking. So there are several ways of causing the tics. So what are we discussing today is like what's the really problem here and how to curl it. Thank you.
So our group, we choose the emotional disease, which is depression, or in Thai โรคซึมเศร้า นะคะ and the symptom, people who have depression would tend to have like they will feel sad, they will have a bad feeling with themselves, and they will think their thinking will be negatively, something like that. So what we think we need to track is like something like hormones, agenda, and psychosocial factors, and also especially in life events. For example, like their family problem, or did they have a problem in the school, and they also we also think that the treatment would be like drugs, or for example like antidepressants, or go to psychiatrist. Yeah.
Okay, we chose obesity to discuss because it is close to our behavior. Just like what causes this disease. Yeah, it's like eating too much. We don't exercise. We are lazy to do anything, and it's like everything starts from ourselves. And we're gonna talk about environment factors. It's like we go to eat barbecue, like pork grilled, or in Thai we call หมูกระทะ for celebrating every kind of events. Like we finish the examinations, we go to eat หมูกระทะ and it causes obesity. And to accomplish, we need to start from ourselves by eating clean food and starting to exercise. Thank you.
Our review drawing about the COPD is called in Thai is a ถุงลมโป่งพอง It means emphysematous lung, and we want to put a score that represent the behavior of the patient, and another score is for the environmental scoring. For the behavior, you have to put in how much you smoke per day, and how long that you smoke, and what is the age that you start smoking. If you start in early age of life, is more risk. For the environmental factor, you have to put in the occupational, like if you work like a garbage keeping, it's more danger. Or if you work in the industrial history that have a smoke, so you are more risk than other people. Another thing is the area of living. If you working or living in a cities area that is more pollutant than in the rural area, so it's more risk. So all over the score that we put in is we calculate into the risk factor, and then we use that score to tell the patient by that he has a risk of COPD, and then he need to see the doctor to test a specific test like a pulmonary function that to confirm that he has a COPD or not. If he is COPD patient, so we will start treatment. If he not, we will predict further that what is the rate of decline of the lung function that we have normally had. So we have the risk factor, and we put in the lung function that is the first test that is even is the normal. So we predict that combined with the rate of decline lung function. So we had an alarm for them that what is the next time for them to re-evaluate the lung function. So this is our program. Thank you.
And the problem it's not about the disease, it's about behavior. It's leg shaking. It's a simple behavior that we all have. And about the environment factor that we think about is about the weather or an emotional. And how do we tag it is at first about the weather. So we have to notice that if it's cold and the leg we shake and or it's hot, we see that the leg we shake. And the last one is the emotion. We have to think that if it's stress or exciting or excited, we have to figure it out that just like me that I'm excited, so my leg is shaking now. Thank you.
No, those were all great, actually. Almost none of those I had thought of, so it's very impressive. Took a little bit longer than I thought, so we're going to have to go a little bit faster. All right, so I'm going to because I think one of you has taken a class on machine learning, I'm going to go on very high level about what we can do, what are the different types of things that we can basically predict or learn given data. And then I want you all to think about what class of algorithm would be applicable in the specific circumstance that you're thinking about, if that makes sense. Okay, so, oh. Can we get this? Got it. Okay. All right, so the world of machine learning is like very large, and there's lots of different algorithms that can do lots of different things. There's lots of subtleties between them. But if we classify all of the algorithms that exist and kind of map them down onto a two-dimensional axis, we can have something along these lines. So on the y-axis, or let's talk about actually the x-axis first. So there's unsupervised algorithms and supervised algorithms. Is this familiar to anybody, or I just want to get a sense of how much this is boring? Okay, just boring you, so it's okay. All right. Okay, so the difference between, so supervised means you have a set of data, you have something you want to predict, and you use the data and the thing you want to predict to train your algorithm to basically you learn a function that maps to. So you, given the data, you predict an output, right? And then later on you get new data and you predict another output. Does that make sense? So the key thing is that you have data and then you have an output that you want to predict. So, and then in the unsupervised, all you have is data. You don't have anything you want to predict. So you're trying to find structure within your data without predicting anything. Okay, so happy to answer questions if there's questions after this slide. And then on the y-axis, we have continuous and categorical. So that means these algorithms are applied to the output of them is either continuous, as in real numbers, right? Or is categorical in the sense of like a number of categories or a binary output. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to go over each four and then I'll ask if there's any questions. So let's talk about supervised classification. Supervised classification is you have data and output, so it's supervised, and it's classification because you're looking at a categorical response, right? So a categorical response can be yes or no, you have something, or you know, A, B, C, D, a discrete number of outputs, right? So like I said before, what you do here is you learn from, let me see if I can use this. You learn from the training data. So this is the data that you have, right? You have data on this plane here, and it's either class 1 or it's class 2. And then based on this data, you learn some function. And then when you have new data, you use the function you learned here to predict if this new data point is either blue or red. Make sense? And there's lots of, this is just some of the names of the algorithms that do this. And I'm happy to talk about these in more detail later on. Okay, so now let's say we're in the supervised regression regime. So supervised regression is, this was classification here, right? So now we're dealing with continuous variables. So instead of trying to predict a discrete number of things, we're looking at real numbers. So here we might be trying to predict, like if you look at a picture of a face, is that face, you know, a human face or is it an animal face, right? Something along those lines. Here you still have data, but what you're trying to predict is something more like how tall is somebody, right? Or what's the stock price of some stock going to be? Or what's the home price of a home given information about the home? Or what's the power consumption of your house? How much electricity does somebody use based on, you know, how many TVs they have, how many people live in the house, things like this. Okay, so we covered these two. So now we're going to talk about these two briefly. So unsupervised clustering. So this is where you only have data and you don't have an output, right? So you have basically each, bean or whatever this is here is some data point, right? And then you want to find groups. So you're given a bunch of data and you want to separate it somehow into groups, but you don't have any output, right? So maybe you have a bunch of people and you want to learn like what are the groups of students here at KKU, right? What are the similarities and differences and how do people, but you're not trying to predict anything. And the last one we'll talk about is where you don't have an output and you're trying to predict something that is continuous. So rather than groups, you're going to a real number again, right? So what this does is basically take a high dimensional representation of something and try and project it down into lower dimensions. So for example, if you have all of these, so these are all twos, right? They're handwritten twos. Up on the top here, you have how big the bottom loop is in the two. Is it like this or is it like this, right? And on here you have the top arch. So is it, like this or is it kind of like this, right? And just based on these two things, you can reduce the dimensionality of each one of these twos and plot them down in some low dimensional space. Make sense? This is less important, so we can kind of skip this. All right, so, hello? All right. Any questions to clarify this before we move on to the next exercise? I don't have a good sense of how useful this was. Questions? All right, so we'll walk around and talk about it. So what I want you guys to do next is, so you've all talked about your the indication or the behavior that you want to modulate, and you have the data that you think causes the behavior, right? And you all talked about this, you have good ideas. So what I want you to do next is think about what type of algorithm do you need for your specific task, right? So which of these do you need for your task, right? And then maybe we can go around very quickly and talk about it, but it shouldn't take too long. So let's take maybe 5 to 10 minutes and think about this, and then I'll walk around and answer any questions. Okay. Hello? Okay, so it seems like that there's some confusion about what exactly to do. So we have someone here who understands it very well. Her name is Nam Tang. And so I'd like to have her explain what exactly to do so that everybody's on the same page, because I think she can do it much better than I can.
ค่ะก็เขาให้ช่วยอธิบายเป็นภาษาไทยนะคะจริงๆก็น่าจะมีคนเข้าใจบ้างอยู่แล้วเนาะแต่ว่าเพื่อที่จะให้เข้าใจตรงกันแล้วกันเนาะก็คือว่าที่เขาให้ทำ exercise เนี่ยก็คือตอนแรกเนี่ยเราแต่ละกลุ่มเนี่ยใช่ไหมคะก็คือคิดแล้วว่าน่าจะทำนายหรือว่า predict อะไรอย่างเช่นบางกลุ่มก็ predict ว่าไข้เลือดออกเนี่ยจะต้องมีแฟกเตอร์อะไรบ้างอะไรประมาณนี้ใช่ไหมเขาก็เลยให้เอาโจทย์นั้นนะคะมาแล้วเขาก็ถามว่าวิธีในการที่จะ predict น่าจะใช้ category อันไหนที่อยู่ใน machine learning ใน4 category นี้เสร็จแล้วทีนี้ใน category ของ machine learning เนี่ยที่เขาบอกเนี่ยมันก็จะมีแยกเป็น4ประเภทใช่ไหมคะเอาประเภทหลักๆก่อน unsupervised กับ supervised อันนี้เมื่อกี้ที่เขาอธิบายพอเข้าใจไหมว่ามันต่างกันยังไงพอเข้าใจบางคนก็ไม่ค่อยเนาะโอเค unsupervised กับ supervised เนี่ยต่างกันตรงที่ว่า supervised เนี่ยเราจะมีข้อมูลแล้วในแต่ละ record ของข้อมูลเราจะมี output หรือ label เนี่ยแปะไว้อย่างเช่นสมมติว่าเป็นกลุ่มภูมิแพ้ละกันภูมิแพ้เนี่ยเขาบอกว่าจะเก็บว่าอุณหภูมิวันนี้เป็นเท่าไหร่หรือสภาพอากาศเป็นยังไงแล้วก็เวลานอนเป็นเท่าไหร่กินอะไรเข้าไปบ้างดื่มอะไรเข้าไปบ้างแล้วเวลาเก็บเนี่ยเราก็จะแปะป้ายว่าโอเคคอนดิชันแบบนี้นะ1 2 3 4คนนี้มีอาการภูมิแพ้วันนี้เรคคอร์ดต่อมาที่เขาเก็บมีอาการแบบนี้มีคอนดิชันแบบนี้1 2 3 4อย่างเงี้ยไม่มีอาการภูมิแพ้นะแล้วมันก็จะเป็นข้อมูลแบบนี้ค่ะคือข้อมูลที่จะมีทั้งไอ้ตัวที่เป็น Data แล้วก็เป็นไอ้ตัวที่เป็น Output ออกมาว่าเราจะแปะป้ายว่าอะไรแต่ถ้าเกิดเป็น Unsupervised เนี่ยจะไม่มีไอ้ตัว Output หรือ Label จะมีแค่ Data อย่างเดียวเลยจะมีแค่ Data อย่างเดียวส่วนทีนี้อันที่2 Category อย่างที่2ก็คือContinuous กับ Categorical ค่าที่เราจะ predict เนี่ยมันจะเป็นจำนวนจริงหรือว่าจะเป็นแคตตากรีค่ะซึ่งไม่จำเป็นจะต้องเป็น2แคตตากรีก็ได้เป็น3แคตตากรีก็ได้อย่างเช่นมีอาการรุนแรงระดับ1 2 3หรือว่าเป็นหรือไม่เป็นอะไรอย่างเงี้ยประมาณนั้นนะคะแล้วก็สมมุติว่า Data ของภูมิแพ้เราใช่ไหมเราสามารถเก็บ Data ที่มี Output ได้เพราะว่าเราสังเกตได้ว่า Condition แบบนี้มันจะให้อาการเป็นแบบนี้คอนดิชันแบบนี้จะให้อาการเป็นแบบนี้อย่างเงี้ยเราสามารถเอาลงแคตตากรีที่เป็นซูเปอร์ไวซ์ได้แล้วก็เอาพุทของเราเนี่ยนักศึกษาเนี่ยกลุ่มนี้เขาต้องการจะแค่บอกว่าวันนี้จะมีอาการภูมิแพ้หรือไม่มีอาการภูมิแพ้เพราะฉะนั้นเป็นแค่2อย่างใช่ไหมไม่ใช่เป็นจำนวนจริงก็จะกลายเป็นแคตตากรีเพราะฉะนั้นกลุ่มของอัลกอริทึมที่เราอยากจะต้องการศึกษาที่จะใช้เนี่ยก็คือจะเป็น classification ประมาณนี้อันนี้เขาก็จะถามว่าไอ้โจทย์ที่เราตั้งขึ้นมาตอนแรกที่เราอยากทราบอะค่ะจะลงเป็น category อันไหนใน4 category อันนี้ตาม character ของ data แล้วก็เอาพุทที่เราต้องการ predict ออกมาประมาณนี้พอเข้าใจไหมคะพอเข้าใจมากขึ้นเนาะ
Okay. All right, good job, everybody. It seems like everybody knows what's going on, so that's great. So, okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is, we've already discussed this a little bit, but pairing the behavior of interest with some kind of machine learning method. So that's effectively what we've been talking about. So I'm going to give you a brief background again on migraines. So I'm trying to predict for myself, what I was trying to predict is, do I have a migraine or do I not have a migraine, right? So that is categorical, right? And I'm doing it based on data and then trying to predict categorical output, right? So that's a supervised classification task, right? So without getting too much into it, one of the algorithms that you can use for this is called a classification tree, which basically separates the space. So have you guys ever played this game? Do you guys recognize this game, or is this too old? You have played? Okay, so what you do in this game is you take the space and you try and slice it up into orthogonal sections, right? So that's basically what a classification tree does. It separates it into these individual sections and then says, you know, migraine, no migraine, migraine, based on one value here and one value here. Maybe it makes sense. So that's what I did. So I did a classification task on my own data to predict whether or not I had migraine. Okay. We already did this mostly, so we can skip that. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about next, and this might be difficult, but okay, so we picked a specific area, right? Classification, regression, dimensionality reduction, or clustering for all of your tasks. So now I want you to pick, but that's just a general type, right? So now what I want you to do is pick a specific algorithm that you would use. And that's going to be hard because you don't know the algorithms that exist, right? So I have a cheat sheet for you here. Is that readable? Can you read that? Maybe? Okay, so it's kind of hard to read. You can come up here later and look at it if you want. But you start here at start, right? And then the next question is, do you have greater than 50 samples, 50 data points, right? And you all should. And then the next question is, are you trying to pick a category, right? Which we've already talked about, which is categorical. So for me, that was yes. So then we go here, yes. Do you have labeled data? Labeled means supervised or unsupervised, right? So for me, for migraines, the answer was yes. So we went up here. And then you can go through and answer the rest of the questions. Do you have less than 100,000 samples? Maybe. And then there's these different, do you have text data or not text data? There's different questions, and you can work your way through that tree and come up with an actual algorithm that you want to use for your task. And once you have this, using, for example, this scikit-learn in Python or in MATLAB or whatever other programming language exists, you can just find implementations of these algorithms and run it on your data. So once you know what algorithm maps to your problem, you're pretty much done. All you have to do is actually code it up, right? So that's the final output of this bootcamp that I want to get to, is for you guys to have a problem, to have the data you will record, and to have the exact algorithm that you would use to code it up to learn what causes or what does not cause your output. So I'll let you all do this for the next maybe 5 to 8 minutes, and then I'll tell you the results of my own study on my own data.
ห็นไหม
All Okay, we're out of time, so let's finish. All right. So everybody's kind of worked through, hopefully everybody's picked one of these green boxes. Does everybody have a green box that they picked? Yes? Raise your hand if you have a green box. What's your green box? Which one do you guys have?
Test. We got classification on the bias.
Okay.
So we're trying to find the relationships between what's really caused it and what's the relationship between the ticks and the cause.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's it. What?
Oh, which green box?
Which green box? Yeah, the bias.
Which one?
Bias.
Okay, good. So you are...
The classification.
Good. Good. All right. Should we have any more, do you think, or? Anyone else want to share? Do you want to share? Yeah. Okay, good, good, good. Okay, so the outcome from this, what I want you guys to take away from this is, one, is basically the general concept of, given a problem, you can go to something like this, and you can find an algorithm to solve the problem that you're looking for. So the next step would be to actually go and find either you or a programmer, and just say, this is my problem, this is my data, and this is the algorithm I want to do, and then you're kind of done. Right? So that's what I was hoping you guys would learn from this process. All right, so last slide. This is what happened for me. So for me, I trained all this data, and then I trained a classification tree on my data. And what I saw was, so there's one kind of gum, right? Xanthan gum, some gum that you chew. And if I have it, then I often get a migraine, right? If I don't, then if I have less than 1 liter of water, I get in the morning, then I get a migraine. If I have more than 1 liter of water, then I don't. So now what I do every day is I don't eat any gum, and I drink more than 1 liter of water, and I never get migraines. So they've been cured for the past almost 2 years. So that's the story. Any questions? Okay, thank you all. I appreciate your time. Hope it was at least somewhat educational.